The airport terminal buzzed with a distant hum, like the world whispering behind thick glass. Nia adjusted her scarf, the fine silk brushing against her lined neck. 65 years had carved softness and sorrow into her face, but today, her expression held something else, nervous anticipation. She clutched her passport and ticket with trembling hands.
Ghana.
A land she'd only seen in travel brochures and on Kwame's smiling face during late-night video calls. Her heart fluttered, half guilt, half desire. David didn't know she was leaving. 42 years of marriage, and she'd packed her suitcase in silence. He had been in the study as always. The glow of his desk lamp etched a pale circle across the carpet. When she passed by, he hadn't looked up. He hadn't asked where she was going or why she had tears in her eyes. Their life had narrowed into routine. Dinners in silence. Weekends of lawn care and forgotten anniversaries. Even the good memories had started to fade like old photographs in a dusty drawer. Nia used to be more. A painter. A woman who danced barefoot in the kitchen. A mother who sang lullabies in French. She missed her laughter. And in Kwame's voice, she'd found echoes of it again. He was 28, an ocean of years away from her world. They met online in a digital forum about African woodcraft. She had commented on a carving. He had replied with warmth and curiosity. One message became a conversation. Conversations became nightly rituals. Nia had tried to resist the thrill at first. She'd convinced herself it was innocent. She was mentoring him, offering wisdom. But wisdom blurred when his voice began to linger in her ears longer than her husband's ever had. Kwame called her sweet Nia. Said her age didn't scare him. That her wrinkles were maps of a life well lived. He said she had the soul of a queen. Now, as the plane boarded, her stomach clenched. Zoe had called her just the night before. "Mom," she had said, "don't do this. You don't know him. Please. I'm begging you." "I'm not a child," Nia had snapped, sharper than she'd intended. "I'm tired of watching life through a window." Zoe had gone quiet, then said, "Dad won't survive this." Nia hung up first. The flight was long and restless. Nia barely slept, replaying everything: Kwame's smile, David's silence, Zoe's plea. Her mind was a battleground between thrill and shame. When the plane touched down in Accra, the heat wrapped around her like a second skin. Outside the terminal, Kwame waited with a sunflower tucked behind his ear and a grin that stretched wide. "Nia," he said, as if her name was a sacred word. He was taller than she imagined, lean but strong, dressed casually in a white linen shirt and sandals. His eyes held a sparkle, part mischief, part something softer. He leaned in to hug her. She froze for a second, then let herself melt into it. "Welcome home," he whispered. Home. The word hit differently. They drove through winding roads, the city humming with colors and life. Vendors lined the streets, shouting prices over baskets of mangoes. Fabrics fluttered in wind, and children darted between cars with practiced agility. Kwame narrated the journey like a guide, pointing out murals, old colonial buildings, schools he'd attended. Beside him sat a man introduced as Jonas, his cousin, soft-spoken and watchful. "He's helping with the tour," Kwame explained. "Knows the backroads better than anyone." Nia offered a polite smile, though something about Jonas' gaze unsettled her. He didn't smile much, and when he did, it felt rehearsed. But she let it go. Her heart was already caught in the rhythm of something new. They stopped at a quiet lodge on the edge of the Volta River that evening. The place was rustic, wooden cabins with mosquito nets and oil lamps. Nia loved it instantly. It felt untouched, sacred. Kwame showed her to her room. As she unpacked, he leaned against the doorway. "You look tired," he said, "but glowing." She laughed nervously. Glowing or sweating? Both. But mostly glowing. Silence stretched between them. Not awkward, just full. Then he stepped inside, slowly, as if testing the air. He touched her hand briefly, and the warmth of it startled her. "Why did you really come, Nia?" She hesitated. Then, because I wanted to feel alive before I forget what that means. He nodded, lips pressing into a line. Then we'll make sure you remember. Dinner was served outside, under the orange glow of lanterns. Grilled fish, plantains, and cold hibiscus tea. Jonas spoke little, excusing himself early. When the night cooled and the frogs began their nightly chorus, Nia and Kwame sat by the river. The moonlight danced on the water. "Do you ever regret reaching out to me?" she asked, voice barely above the breeze. Kwame turned to her.
"Never. Do you?"
She paused, then shook her head. "Not yet." He smiled. "Good." He didn't kiss her.
"Not yet."
But the space between them had shrunk. Later that night, in the quiet of her room, Nia sat by the window, watching fireflies spark in the trees. She opened her journal, flipping past entries about David, Zoe, and Sunday roast dinners. She began to write something new. "Today, someone looked at me like I mattered. I don't know if this is right, but it feels like a beginning." She paused, then crossed out a beginning and wrote, "The first step off the edge." Morning crept over the horizon in soft amber hues, casting golden lines across the wooden floor of Nia's room. The air was warm, thick with the scent of wet earth and distant cooking fires. She had barely slept. The memory of Kwame's hand on hers haunted her in the gentlest way. She looked at herself in the mirror. Creased nightgown, gray streaks in her unbrushed hair, the tired beauty of someone who had lived and lost and was now risking again. There was a knock. She opened the door to find Kwame holding a cup of fresh coffee and a small, hand-carved pendant strung on twine. "I made this for you," he said. "It's a bird, Freedom." Nia traced its shape with her fingers. "It's beautiful." He smiled. "So are you." No one had said those words to her in years, not with sincerity. Not with eyes that didn't drift away in regret. It was frightening how quickly she wanted to believe him. The day was spent traveling through the countryside. Jonas drove. Nia sat in the front beside Kwame, who narrated the passing landscapes with vivid stories, legends of ancient trees, rivers that whispered secrets, villages where time moved slower. They stopped to explore a quiet market. Children played with wooden toys while elders sold spices from clay bowls. Kwame held Nia's hand openly now, and no one seemed to care. Or perhaps they did, and she didn't notice. They laughed more easily here. Kwame danced briefly to the beat of a street drummer, twirling Nia with surprising grace. Her laughter was loud and real, so real it startled her. It had been decades since she had laughed without restraint. As the afternoon sun mellowed, they stopped by a lake fringed with palms and reeds. Jonas set up a small picnic. The air was still, the surface of the water glassy and calm. Kwame and Nia wandered down the shore, away from the car, until the silence swallowed them. She looked at him, studying the lines of his face. "You're quiet." "I'm thinking," he said. "About." He hesitated, then reached for her hand. "About how impossible this should be, and yet how right it feels." Nia felt her breath catch. She wanted to say it back, but words faltered. She looked at the horizon instead. "I'm old enough to be your mother," she whispered. "You're old enough to know what you want," he said. His words burned like truth. And for a moment, the world stopped arguing. That evening, they checked into a modest inn outside Kumasi. Nia's room was small but cozy, with white linen and a faint scent of lavender. She showered and changed into a soft dress. Something in her chest tightened as she heard a knock on the door. She opened it slowly. Kwame stood there, barefoot, hair damp, a bottle of local wine in hand. "Come sit with me," he said.
She didn't speak.
Just followed. They sat on the balcony, wine between them, silence around them. Then, softly, "Do you trust me, Nia?" She looked into his eyes, warm, searching. "I don't know. I want to." He nodded. "Then let's just be here.
Now."
No past. No future. Just us." He leaned in. This time, she didn't turn away. Their lips met. The kiss was not hungry. It was reverent, slow, full of ache and unspoken things. And when they crossed that final boundary, clothes discarded, bodies bare, the years between them collapsed. It wasn't lust that carried them. It was a hunger for connection, for being seen, for being needed. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets. Her hand rested on his chest. His fingers played absently with her hair. "I should feel ashamed," she said, barely audible. Kwame turned his head. "Do you?" She closed her eyes. "I feeled awake." The next morning, the mood had shifted. Kwame was distant, still kind, still gentle, but quieter. There was something guarded in his smile, something rehearsed in his affection. Nia felt it immediately, though she said nothing. Over breakfast, Jonas barely looked at her. Instead, he kept glancing at Kwame. Quick, sharp looks that said more than words. They set out again, heading north this time. The drive was long. Hot wind whistled through open windows. Nia dozed off, waking briefly to hear Jonas murmuring something in Twi. She caught one word. "Abroni." "White woman." Kwame replied too softly for her to catch. But when he glanced at her in the rearview mirror, something flickered. Regret? Guilt? The car fell silent again. By late afternoon, they reached a hilltop village overlooking endless fields of cocoa trees. Nia stepped out into the breeze, grateful for the air, but uneasy in her chest. Kwame wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. "Do you like it?" She nodded, but the warmth was fading. That night, as she got ready for bed, her phone buzzed.
Zoe.
One message.
Mom. Please. Call me.
"I found out who he is." Nia stared at the screen. Her hands went cold. She looked at the door. She wanted to show Kwame. Wanted him to reassure her, tell her everything was fine. But he wasn't in his room. She walked down the hall. Kwame's door was slightly ajar. Inside, his voice low, tense, was speaking rapidly. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. When she knocked, the talking stopped. Footsteps. Then the door opened just enough for his face to appear.
"Oh."
"Nia," he said. "Everything okay?" She nodded, forcing a smile. "Just couldn't sleep." He stepped out, closed the door behind him. "Walk with me?" She hesitated, then nodded. They walked beneath the moonlight, the gravel crunching underfoot. "Who are you talking to?" she asked. "Just Jonas. Making arrangements for tomorrow," he said too quickly. She tried to believe him, but the voice in her head, the one that had been silent for days, had returned. And it was whispering doubts. As they reached the edge of the path, overlooking the dark treetops, she asked, "Is this real, Kwame?" He didn't answer immediately. Then, "I want it to be." It wasn't what she needed to hear, but it was enough to keep her from turning away.
For now.
The morning was still almost too quiet. Even the birdsong felt subdued, as if nature itself held its breath. Nia awoke with a tightness in her chest, one she couldn't explain. She sat up slowly. Her phone buzzed again.
"Zoe. Mom. You need to listen to me."
"I found him on Facebook. His full name is Kwame Nyarko. He's been messaging multiple older women. One even sent money. I'm begging you, get out of there." Nia's hands trembled. The room blurred for a moment, her heartbeat roaring in her ears. A cold wash of nausea rolled over her. She had known. Somewhere deep inside, she had always known. But she didn't want it to be true. Downstairs, she found Kwame and Jonas packing the vehicle. Their energy had shifted, more businesslike, more hurried. Kwame smiled at her, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We'll head to the village market, then take a scenic route to Mole National Park. It'll be beautiful." Nia nodded numbly. On the road, her silence grew heavy. Kwame glanced at her. "Everything okay?" She studied his face. So charming. So calculated. "Tell me the truth, Kwame," she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. "Why me?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean." He exhaled through his nose. "You think I've used you. Have you?" His grip on the steering wheel tightened. Jonas glanced at them in the mirror, but said nothing. Finally, Kwame pulled the car to the side of the road. Dust rose around them in lazy spirals. He turned to her. You want the truth?
Fine.
At first, yes. I reached out because I thought you were vulnerable. Easy. Nia flinched. I needed help. My mother is sick. We have nothing. I thought maybe if you cared, you'd send money. That's how it started. Silence. But something changed, he added quickly. When you spoke, when I read your emails, I didn't expect to like you. Like me? She echoed, voice breaking. You let me sleep beside you. You let me believe I was loved. Kwame's jaw clenched. I didn't plan for that. Tears welled in Nia's eyes. You let me think I mattered. You do, he said, almost desperate. Nia, Stop. She raised a hand, palm trembling. You could have told me the truth. I might have helped you anyway. He looked away, and in that moment, something inside her shattered, not with noise, but with a quiet, final snap of trust undone. They drove on in silence. At the next stop, a roadside guest house, Nia stepped out without a word. She walked, arms crossed tightly, to the edge of a wide savanna. Elephants grazed in the distance, unbothered by the human sorrow unfolding nearby. Kwame followed her after a few minutes. Nia, please. I was wrong. But I didn't fake everything. I do care. She turned to him. Her face was calm now, eerily so.
No.
You cared about what I gave you, my attention, my vulnerability, my escape. But not me. He opened his mouth but found no words. Nia shook her head. You weren't the first man to lie to me. But you were the first who made me want to believe again. She walked past him, and for the first time he didn't follow. That night, Nia sat alone in her room, staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror. She didn't cry. The tears had already run dry. She picked up her phone and dialed. Zoe, she said when the call connected. Mom, came the relieved voice on the other end. Are you okay? No, Nia whispered, but I will be. The next morning, she booked a ride to the airport. Jonas didn't protest. Kwame stood by the door as she prepared to leave. He held out the wooden bird pendant. Keep it, he said softly. She looked at it, then back at him. I'll leave it with you, she replied. Freedom shouldn't come from someone else. With that, she stepped outside, suitcase in hand, dignity intact. Back home, the cold British air hit her skin like a second betrayal. The cab ride was silent. As the house came into view, something inside her twisted. David stood in the garden, trimming the hedges like always. He looked up, eyes squinting. For a moment, they just stared at each other. She stepped out slowly. Back so soon, he asked. I didn't want to stay, she replied. He studied her for a long time. You were with someone? She nodded. He didn't flinch. Are you staying? I don't know, she said honestly. I just wanted to come home. David nodded once. The kettle's on. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was a start. That evening, she sat at the kitchen table alone. A sketch pad lay before her, its pages untouched for years. She picked up a pencil. Slowly, deliberately, she began to draw. Not Kwame. Not David. Herself.